Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Own the Moment podcast. And despite what our title slide said, this is not actually an NBA Top Shot show. This is our first dedicated NFL All Day show. We are going to be talking exclusively NFL All Day today. And, I'm joined today by Jay Swah. You've seen him on the OTM website, been writing for us for a couple of weeks. And has been an avid Top Shot and NFL All Day collector for a while. So, Jay, welcome to the show. We're thrilled to have you on the team.
Thanks for having me. And it's been an interesting time exploring NFL All Day, and something we're going to talk about in a bit here. But the comparisons between Top Shot and NFL All Day, they're inescapable, and they're kind of a double-edged sword. But we'll go ahead and talk about that. But I appreciate you having me on and letting me be a part of your initial hosting duties. And I'm excited to talk a little NFL All Day.
Yeah, we're laughing because this is take 2 already. I already messed something up. So we're going to see if we can get this one right. I stopped the first broadcast after like 30 seconds or something. So we're going to figure this out. We don't have producer Coop behind the scenes today. He's on a well-deserved date night. And so we're going to figure this out. Jay and I are smart people. And if we mess something up, we'll hit pause, I guess. So, Jay, I think before we jump into to NFL All Day and kind of talking about it, I'd love just you to give a little bit more of an intro to yourself and how you came to be involved in Top Shot, how you came to be involved in NFL All Day, which I'm assuming is through Top Shot because I know a little bit about your history, and then just how you got started with Own the Moment.
Absolutely. So I've been betting on sports for pretty seriously for about a decade now, and I'm a product of the Chris Moneymaker poker boom days. Buddies and I in middle school and high school, a lot of our dads are kind of quasi degenerate gamblers or at least poker players, bettors, things of that nature. So that really caught on with us. We would play season-long fantasy leagues every year. And obviously play cash games, things of that nature on the weekends. I went off to college, and my buddies actually started taking poker a little bit more seriously. And I would come home in the summer. We would kind of pick up on those games and whatnot. And one of my buddies got into sports betting, knew a guy who would take some action. And if we referenced people to him, he'd give us some free bets. So we were, summer in between college, just having a good time. We had a little door-to-door job we did, pushing free estimates for window siding and roofing. Side note, if that company ever comes to you, do not go with them. But we had a good time, and we would just talk about the lines and stuff and the games. And it was during baseball season, and we were pretty big fish back then, and we would bet on the best starting pitchers. And we started realizing we're really, even with free bets, we're not doing well. So my buddies kind of drifted back towards poker, and I was hooked. So after college, kind of trying to figure out what I wanted to do. My best friend at the time, he had graduated before me, but he had a conference in Vegas during March Madness, and he knew how big of a college basketball fan I am. So I went out there, actually met some professional bettors who kind of took us under their wing for the weekend. I had a great time, and then kind of a couple of weeks before graduation knew that, all right, this is something I want to take seriously. So kind of started following their advice, went to grad school, picked a career that would let me to live the degen lifestyle I wanted to live, which is just happened to be molding young minds as a teacher. Not working weekends, never at night, things of that nature. But with always the intention to move back out west. So I'm in the DC area right now. So I was just building a bankroll, going to grad school, grinding college basketball, NFL, things of that nature. DFS then had their boom. So kind of like all my poker friends and I met back at the DFS streets, kind of started getting into that. But then Vegas actually banned DraftKings and other DFS. Yeah. So I kind of went off that for a while. 2 years later, I moved out to Vegas, was a full-time bettor, decided to come back to my job after I learned a lot about it. But the biggest thing I learned was all the people I wanted to meet, I was meeting them via online. It wasn't like I didn't have to be in Vegas. And it was right when the Supreme Court was overturned the ban on sports betting. So there's so many moving parts. It's actually very similar to then the NFT kind of avalanche that happened. So went back to my job, decided I wanted to start a blog, a podcast, try to tell people what sports betting is really like, not like those, DraftKings or whatever commercials we'll see. And then Bale's article came out. I was like, this guy's helped me make, a decent amount of money in DFS and whatnot. So I got into Top Shot. That's also when everything shut down, working from home, things of that nature. So got, boxed into a pretty nice bankroll with that. And then I found out on the moment when it was kind of like, you guys were like the oasis where I feel like everyone was just like, oh, this is free money. This is going to go on forever. And I remember, hearing stuff from Justin and some of the other guys. And I was like, okay, this kind of resonates where I'm coming from. So I would use a lot of the tools to help me out there. I'm also not like, I'm not a huge quant guy, but I know that I'm not a huge quant guy. So, I have no problem getting data from somewhere else and trusting it rather than me trying to create my own numbers. So, I would use Own the Moment to help me with my purchases. And then in the fall, once you guys decided you're going to roll out the fantasy football, I decided kind of with the Bales article strategy, just it's more important to be first than to be right. So I was like, I'm going all in. I really believe in these guys. I think I met you guys at NFT NYC. I took the train up, chilled with you guys, met you guys, took the train back that night, went to school the next day with a bit of a hangover, and been writing in Discord and been writing for you guys since NFL All Day has been coming out. So I come from a sports betting background, pretty basic poker background, but in more of a high dollar season long fantasy background than DFS, but definitely can, probably break even DFS, cash player, poker player, things of that nature as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember when we got to meet and you'd been writing some articles already just on your own blog for the Owners Club, and thinking like, yeah, this is someone we need to get on the team, and chatting with you that night. I think that's what we said, hey, we'll work together. And then, took a little bit of time to get it ramped up, but we were able to start, right around the time that All Day was starting. And certainly think, a lot of the value in backgrounds comes from knowledge of what's going on in the sports themselves, right? The tools are great, but if you can't contextualize them, and so much of, I think, this podcast and our written content is meant to be, how do we contextualize all the numbers that we have, and how do we add that actual sports background into it? So yeah, thrilled to have you on the team. The articles have been great. Kind of, if you haven't looked at them, definitely check them out. Jay's been breaking down top plays from every drop, and, adding that, hey, how good is the moment context with the player and their career trajectory, et cetera. And we're going to get into some discussion on that here in a little bit. But so, just to kind of set the stage, what do we got going on? It's as it always is, has been a big week for NFL All Day. I think the biggest thing that we've got, and I'm going to just try to multitask, share my screen while I talk about it, is the announcement from the Patrick Mahomes thing. So, we saw this tweet from NFL All Day, kind of teased something with Mahomes. We don't know exactly what it is, but you can see the video here of him watching himself.
Oh, that's sweet right there.
So, clearly something big going on this week with Mahomes and Top Shot, and All Day, Top Shot and All Day. Jay, any thoughts, any guesses as to what we might be getting from Mahomes here?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to let your imagination run wild. I know internally, people were with the Own the Moment crew, somebody talked about, is it VR? Is it stuff of that nature? And then we kind of had to walk ourselves back saying, hey, this is dapper. We got to kind of have a walk before we can run here. But it's easy to let your imagination run wild with it. I mean, that's Patrick Mahomes. Think about when, the first drop started to happen to now you have pretty much the face of the NFL tied with this, right? So I think that's where, like I said, we're going to talk about the comparisons with Top Shot to NFL All Day a lot. But if you think about, Top Shot just having pretty much the equivalent, or at least close to the equivalent, with Kevin Durant being a part of it, that timeline was a lot narrower with Patrick Mahomes now somehow being a part of NFL All Day. So just one of the first of many the comparisons we'll be making to Top Shot. But I think it's important to keep our short-term expectations in perspective, but it's hard not to feel good about this when you start looking at it from 2, 5, 10 years point of view.
Yeah, I definitely think the Mahomes thing more likely to be a marketing campaign in my mind featuring him than it is to be some functionality like was shown in the YouTube video. But nonetheless, super exciting that Mahomes is coming. So I think it'll be awesome to see. And then of course later this week we have the next pack drop. So that will be the pack drop tomorrow. Actually, we're recording this on Thursday night, so that'll be super exciting. We did have our own Herzig bot analysis on the EVs of the previous pack drop. So this was for the last replay pack. We had the EVs of the pack drop. You can see the EV projection we had was $40 to $46 for the standard, and the premium was 186 to 217. I think the actuals we've seen is that the EV of a standard pack was 52, so just a little bit higher than our projection. And then the EV that we had on the premium pack was 206, so kind of right in the middle. Unfortunately, 206 is still negative EV, but again, it's early and lots to know there. I did touch base with Justin earlier today and get the updated projection, which we will share just a little bit later on in the show. So I gotta keep you around to listen to some of the rest of it before we give out those EV numbers, which I'm sure we'll be posting at some point on Twitter as well. So
yeah, absolutely. And the biggest thing is this is where we start to see the other side of it, right? Where for so long that the problem, quote unquote problem with Top Shot was the fact that the packs were too much positive EV, right? And how that hurt the marketplace. And, we're only 2 weeks into the marketplace. And I really think the articles that we've been posting recently, not just my own, but, John and Ryan's are really good places to start because, we want to have those, those flag plants, if you will. But the right answer is we're learning from each other. We're constantly reevaluating. And I really think John's article is a great way to really be introduced to the marketplace as a whole, and also what Own the Moment can do with the tools and analysis to help you make sense of everything. And then Ryan's article, and just Ryan in general, quick background. I was talking before the show to you and Justin, just Ryan is just, when it comes to futures betting, sports betting, MVP races, things of that nature, he's just like an absolute legend in the sports betting community. So I've actually been following him for a really long time. And I don't do the physical cards, but apparently he also is pretty well versed in that as well. So I really wouldn't miss anything that he's putting out. And I think he not only gives you the big picture hurdles and pros and cons, but then the thing we all want, which is what moments is he looking at? How is he looking at them? And is he trying to buy now, short term, medium term, or potentially long term?
Yeah. And we'll touch a little bit more, I think, throughout the show as we get into it on specific things, ways that we're thinking about it. But, I'd love to use that as a transition and just get kind of some of your initial thoughts to start on, what are, what have you seen? I will just share, we were looking at the Crypto Slam numbers right before the show. So right now we're up to over $11 million in total transactions, total transaction volume, over 200,000 total transactions. And we've really only been live for just over 2 weeks now. So, while the pace has been less frenetic than I think we saw with Top Shot at the very beginning, it's still moving, man. $11 million over 2 weeks is a lot, and 200,000 transactions is a ton. What are some of your, you keep referencing the comparisons are inevitable, but I'd love to just get some of your immediate reactions to the NFL All Day Marketplace launch, and, a little bit of that comparison of, in general, what have you thought of the first couple of weeks of the NFL All Day Marketplace launch? And then, how has that compared to, maybe not your expectations, but public expectations and public perception there?
Sure. I mean, I think that the numbers you just listed in a vacuum are extremely impressive. The problem is they're up against the backdrop of what many of us were fortunate enough to go through with Top Shot. So as far as my expectations, they're pretty much, I mean, not to toot my own horn or whatnot, but they're pretty much where not only I thought, but Ryan and a lot of the other guys on the team, where they were seeing things going where with its inevitable, bar set so high, where people think, well, this price is only going to go up, things of that nature. But once we kind of had that initial dip, not that things have been necessarily completely, plateaued, they've stayed relatively, around the prices after that kind of first 5 or 6 day drop. And I think that's just people are getting this information quicker. Like I said, kind of comparing the Patrick Mahomes to the Kevin Durant, that cycle. If you remember that March, April, May, June, it was kind of just like a constant, bleeding out of the marketplace. Whereas I feel like that has kind of happened at a much quicker pace. Now, obviously we're only 2 weeks in, but with the circulation counts, the 4-badge Rams wide receiver, the name escapes me, the wide receiver, I don't even know how many balls he caught.
Skowronek.
Yeah. I mean, that was going for like $100 and quickly came down to, I think it was down around $10. It might still be in that area last I checked, but I wouldn't be shocked to see something similar happen for the remainder of the offseason. You might get a little buzz during some campaigns with Mahomes or the draft, things of that nature. But I think come August and September, that's going to be, I think that's where we should see expectations, especially we should have hopefully a roadmap by then. Maybe some more utility via maybe challenges, or is it primetime games they go after or whatnot. I mean, I think that we've talked about the negative comparisons, the inevitable comparisons with Top Shot, but I think the positive is Dapper was valuated at over $7 billion in September. I mean, they have these licenses with the NFL, the NBA. A good thing Ryan mentions in the article is just talking about how many different physical cards companies there are, and a lot of his best cards are of defunct companies, right? Things of that nature. I don't think we have to worry about that. The way Dapper fails is if NFTs fail, and let's be real, if it's March 2022 and you're watching this live stream, you're not believing that, right? So that's where I think the positive comes in. Another thing is, the NBA actively met with Dapper to try to create this product. I believe it was on the first mint where I heard that. The way the NBA is run, I think it's kind of hard to argue. It's a great business, but compared to the other sports leagues, it's a fantastic sports league. Whereas the NFL is kind of just, for lack of a better term, kind of in catch-up mode, a cash grab, if you will. But at the end of the day, we know this. The NFL, it's king in this country, and as much growth as the NBA has made, it's still a long ways from matching the NFL. So we've kind of talked about the negatives with all day, but there's certain inherent advantages that having NBA Top Shot is kind of like hey, this is where we want to be 12, 15 months from now. And maybe they can try out maybe riskier things on Top Shot, see how that went, and then what they like, tweak it, and kind of roll that out organically with NFL all day. To make a long story short, I think it's been pretty much expected, especially with, we don't know, is there going to be moments from week 1 to week 9? Are those going to come out? Are those going to come out,
right,
in replay packs? Are they going to, so there's still so much unknown that I think if you're making any sort of purchase, you need to at least be willing to hold throughout the calendar year through the next football season, just because there's so many variables at play. But if you're making that any purchase with a 12, 18 month plus horizon, I think you're making a good, your head's in the right place, as long as, of course, you're mindfully choosing these moments.
Yeah. I think the thing you said that resonated with me is, it's not, we don't know the utility yet, right? We haven't seen the explosion that we saw for Top Shot in January, February timeframe of last year, but it's an entirely different NFT environment as well. Like Top Shot really ushered in, to a large extent, a new age of interest in NFTs and brought so many people into an ecosystem that no one knew about. And NFL All Day isn't launching in that environment. And so it's, while people might have hoped that if they got in early on the beta and got some good stuff, that it would be similarly valuable to the early days of Top Shot. That's just, it's a different NFT environment. It's a different political and economic environment than it was at that time, and crypto environment. So lots of factors, but I do think that the question mark that remains, that is as of yet unanswered, but highly speculated about, is what will that future utility be, and how will NFL All Day, do things similar to what Top Shot did around challenges with challenge rewards and around flash challenges, and what's the utility, and the fantasy football is just such a bigger animal than fantasy basketball, and is that something that they're going to bring into bring into existence much earlier, featuring all day moments than they did, which they still haven't done for Top Shot. Certainly at the Owners Club, we think NFTs in fantasy football is a great idea. So imagine that we'll see something similar using NFL all day moments at some point. But again, that's speculation by me at this point, because we don't have that roadmap. And I agree. I think expecting that, rocket ship, we haven't seen it. I think if you were expecting the rocket ship, you're disappointed, but probably most people are not surprised. So.
Absolutely.
What, from a overall trend perspective, beyond the kind of macro NFL all day environment, is there anything, micro within what we've actually seen from a performance perspective that has surprised you or kind of not surprised you?
Yeah. We kind of expected the quarterback and wide receivers, the kind of those stars. And obviously when we go and look at these tiers that got a lot of response on Twitter, it makes sense. Not only the stars of the league, but just the way that the league's moving. When we get to comparing the quarterback tiers, the wide receiver tiers, and then the running back tiers, to me at least, the running backs almost feel closer to the tight ends than they do to the wide receivers and quarterbacks. And that was something that, someone being a lifelong football fan, it just shows you the sign of the times. So really that it's been surprising. It's just that it's been surprising to that level. And it's just one thing that's why we use data in everyday decision makings. I kind of knew that, but when you see the actual price differences and that to me resonated the most. You talk about these running backs, you take out those top 5, 5 years from now, how many of these guys are still going to be in the league, So just thoughts like that really jumped out to me. But it's really hard to make any big conclusions yet. We are still only 2 weeks in. But I think another important part is when the NFL season kicks in August, Top Shot's going to be done series 3, and it'll have its summer series again. I mean, there's so much that they're learning. And you would hope, obviously we've had our hearts a little bit broken by Dapper before, but you would hope they're going to be incorporating some of these things. So no major takeaways yet, at least unexpected takeaways, but definitely confirming some theories we had.
Yeah. What about from any individual kind of player valuations that have stood out to you to date?
Yeah, we were kind of talking about the Trey Lance versus Trevor Lawrence. I was kind of shocked that the Trevor Lawrence legendary moment is more expensive than the Trey Lance. I get that Urban Meyer's gone and Doug Peterson's in there now, but Trey Lance's legendary moment is also his debut. Then you factor in the talent, the 49ers, obviously 3 years ago going to a Super Bowl, this year having a fourth quarter lead to potentially go to the Super Bowl. I think the bar for Trey Lance to come in and be a meaningful player in this league is pretty high. Whereas, Trevor Lawrence, there's a lot of ways things could, he could not hit his expectations. So that was definitely interesting to me. We were talking beforehand about how Brady doesn't have a legendary moment out yet. So also there's kind of that his rare moment. I think it's around $1,800 right now. There are sports books out there saying you can put up money on if you think he'll actually play another down. So that one I expected to see. Yeah, it's around implied odds about 20% that he's going to return. I could easily see another Brett Favre scenario. I don't think I'm the only one, obviously. So yeah, from the players, there are some moments that like Super Bowl moments that are going for $20, things that I was surprised that they're that low. Also, if you look at sets, there's 3 rare sets you can get for right around $500. I mean, some of these sets are defensive players and 2-minute drills, things of that nature. But I think one thing that Dapper's learned from Top Shot is rewarding those set holders, and getting those airdrops. So I think, being able to get those 3 for around $500 each is definitely something reasonable to kind of take a pretty safe, quote unquote, bet on, that you'll probably get some sort of airdrop maybe next year or even sooner. And then also like the Super Bowl. If you think about the first Super Bowl, obviously we're talking about the Chiefs and Packers, but that the first Super Bowl we're talking about, if you think about it, in terms of the all-day moments, you can get that entire set for around $6,000 right now. And I mean, they're not all legendary. I think there's only 2 legendary moments, but there's a Jamar Chase rare in there, Matthew Stafford rare. So or it might be a common, but a Matthew Stafford moment in there as well. Yeah. So I was a little shocked to see how low that is, especially saying, obviously the Rams are not a marquee franchise now, but 5, 10, 15 years from now, being based in Los Angeles, that could very well change.
Yeah, you've got the market. Yeah, I thought it was super interesting, and I was just going to share. Let me see. There we go. All right, I was just going to share this. Man, this background is wild. I don't know what we did here, but so forgive me. Yeah, this was not supposed to be the background that we had, but you can see that that we broke down kind of what we saw from a rare and common tier of the top 25 low ask moments. So the top 25 moments with the low ask, and I think the thing that you called out, quarterbacks and wide receivers, winning the day, holds true. Lots of rookies in there. Interesting that there were a couple team melts, but we clearly are seeing the quarterback and the wide receivers being by far the most valued moments by people. And I know we keep talking about it, but it's because we believe in it. If you looked at Ryan Reynolds' article, he put something out in, it must have been August or September timeframe, just talking about how do we start to prepare mentally for digital collectibles, and given his experience in the sports card market. And he said exactly that. Quarterbacks and wide receivers are going to win the day. Running backs, tight ends, everyone else is, if you can find a diamond in the rough, if you can find a rookie who ends up being really good, if you can find a legend for a reasonable price, that's a place that you might want to attack. But generally speaking, you're going to want the quarterbacks and the wide receivers, and that's definitely played out in the data so far.
Absolutely, and that kind of jives with I don't know if you play any Dynasty fantasy football, but that's kind of how we build in Dynasty, right, with those young wide receivers. So yeah, just sign of the times.
All right. Well, I'm going to see if I can share my screen without the wild background, but I did want to kind of transition into a little bit of the tiers discussion. I know you mentioned them, but definitely something that that we are thinking about all the time here at Own the Moment. And we've been putting out our tier rankings of players over the past week or so on Twitter. So we do have that, and I'm going to pull it up now. But just wanted to kind of walk through and get your thoughts. I know that you, for folks who don't know, Jay was not as involved in some of the actual tier rankings as I was. So you're going to get a little bit of his unfiltered thoughts, whereas I have a little bit of a reputation to protect because I was a part of the team that made the tiers, but. Jay, I'd love to just kind of start with quarterback. We saw some discussion about all of these on Twitter, and we can reference that. But, as we look at quarterback, what are some of your takeaways here for, was there anyone who stood out in the tier they were in for a good or a bad reason?
Yeah, I think this is where you kind of have to separate the on-field stats from the perception, and it's not just the stats in a vacuum. So, for example, like Aaron Rodgers being on the same level as Patrick Mahomes, I think if you look at Aaron Rodgers' career, his numbers, absolutely, he should be right up there. But he's been overshadowed by Brady and even Manning and some of the other legendary quarterbacks we've had during this time. Whereas at this moment, Patrick Mahomes has a pretty good the next one, if you will. So if it was between Mahomes and Rodgers, I would definitely take Mahomes. And I think that's the best way to try to decipher what you feel different to the marketplace. And that's what this fun is, you know, there's not necessarily a right answer. It's just, you know, who's going to put their money behind it, right? I'm going to buy these moments. You're going to buy those moments. And, you know, we'll see the right answer in a couple of years. But, you know, same price, same type of moment. I would definitely take Patrick Mahomes over Aaron Rodgers. And it's mostly just because of the upside. I love Tom Brady having the appropriate GOAT status. You got to imagine a legendary is going to come out at some point. Really curious to see how the market reacts to that. Potential Hall of Fame. I know this one was going back and forth internally with the Own the Moment team, but I think Ben Roethlisberger is definitely a Hall of Famer. But Russell Wilson, I could see Russell Wilson having a long career still in Denver. Just the way he, you know, takes care of himself. And I mean, he's an easy guy sometimes to make fun of, but you know, I could see that guy playing in the league for a long time. But barring, of course, an injury of some sort. Whereas you're kind of getting Matthew Stafford kind of at his high point right now off of the Super Bowl run, you know, maybe that he gets another one, something of that nature. But I think Russell kind of having, I think it was the first year, I think it's the first time he hasn't finished first or second in a division. He actually finished fourth in a division. So I think you are kind of getting a buy low on Wilson there. Obviously Joe Burrow has tons of upside. Josh Allen, I mean, pretty much anyone in that top talent elite upside.
It's a crazy group when you think about the actual football players in that group.
Yeah. I mean, the crazy part is it's almost like who would you not? I think that's almost the better discussion is who would you not pick in that? And to me, it's Kyler Murray, which is insane to think about, given how he could easily be a revolutionary player. I think you're kind of getting Lamar Jackson. I mean, I'm out here in the DC, Maryland area. I'm not a Ravens fan, but I respect the Ravens organization. They were just decimated by injuries. And you know, Lamar Jackson is younger than Joe Burrow. So that's something I think a lot of people forget about. So he could easily, you know, take it to another level. And then I think it's a big
Got to talk about Joe though, right?
Yeah. I mean, Joe, it's funny because there's two of the biggest bets in my life. Joe has burned me on, and I still love Joe. I had a features ticket on the Clemson team. The year they beat Alabama, I had a smaller futures on it. I went in halftime when they were beating Alabama. I put it on the next year. I was at the Westgate. I was actually watching the game with Sports Cheetah and some of the guys from the Action Network out in Vegas.
Oh, yeah.
Ran up there and put it for next year. Put a hefty bet on it. Sat on it all year, and I hedged out Alabama, hedged out Georgia, and then, you know, LSU, Joe Burrow, and Ed Orgeron just come out of nowhere and have a historic year. I had also a huge futures bet on the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl this year, and Joey B does it to me again. And I still love the guy. So, yeah. I mean, other than that, I think Trey Lance and Dak Prescott are the only ones that aren't in there that I kind of equate to even being in the realm of that top talent elite upside. I think, you know, Dak with the Cowboy effect, with, you know, they've really been close. And I grew up a Redskin, whatever, Washington football commander fan, whatever you want to call it. I'm not anymore, given the state of that franchise, not because of the name, the owner, but
yeah.
But I mean, you know, if Dak's an easy guy to root for, and with the Cowboys effect, and they've been pretty close. They've kind of been unlucky on a couple of things. So I could see them winning a Super Bowl, at least one. And then Trey Lance, and of course, Trevor Lawrence. But Trey Lance, I mean, it's just so easy to see the stars connecting for him. So those are my thoughts. How about yourself, other than a little Joey B pumping?
Yeah, gotta love Joey B. It was a fun season to be a Bengals fan for the first time in many years.
You guys,
yeah, I definitely think Dak is probably kind of the most contentious one here in terms of, you know, ranking relative to everyone else. He's certainly proven more than anyone in that young high upside line, and he's not that much older than most of them. And you could argue he's proven somewhat similar, you know, so far to some of the top talent elite upside guys. So I think he's probably the hardest one to rank there. And he does feel differentiated from the guys in that proven solid tier. I do think the Cowboy effect was something that Ryan talked about quite a bit in his most recent article about some moments that he would be targeting if he was kind of in the buying space in NFL all day right now. And that's a real thing. So definitely, I think Dak's the one that makes the most kind of sense in terms of, or makes the most sense to discuss. Like, is he in the right place? Let's move on to our running back tier, and anything, like lots of names on here, but any kind of couple guys that stand out to you. This one got a lot of discussion on Twitter. There were a lot of people who didn't like a number of the guys that we ranked where we ranked them.
Yeah, I think that's just like something about Twitter and fantasy football Twitter with running backs. It's like it's a bit, of course, but it's also just like every offseason, always running back. You can make a case for all of them, or someone's overrated. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about this, at the beginning of the show. I think trying to maybe buy a team that's on the upside and trying to equate that with a younger running back. So someone like Javonte Williams to me kind of sticks out where, if they don't bring back Melvin Gordon, Javonte could very easily be a first round, late, maybe early second round draft pick in a lot of fantasy drafts. And if Russell Wilson, takes the Broncos to where they need to be, you might be getting 2, 3, 4 years of a real stud running back. I also think, maybe think of those indirect things that could help a running back. So obviously the Colts just traded away Carson Wentz, but they also got rid of that contract. They have a lot of cap space. So if they were to somehow bring in a quarterback, you might want to hop on Jonathan Taylor because, he had ridiculous numbers last year, but they should have been a playoff team. They choked that week 18 game to the Jaguars. So then, how much better does a quarterback really have to be, or even good, how good does a quarterback have to be better than Carson Wentz was last year? You can get a Matt Ryan in there, or you can get Kirk Cousins in there. And that's a big jump from how bad Carson Wentz really was last year, which is, of course, why the Washington Commanders, traded for him. But that's for another story. For me, I think Christian McCaffrey, tons of risk given, I think he's been out 20 of the last 33 games, something of that nature. Derrick Henry to me is, if we look back on this era of football, he's the last just truck stick era running back with immense speed and whatnot. So for me, he's almost the quote unquote safest guy on this list for me. Obviously Adrian Peterson's Adrian Peterson, but we're not getting his prime moments, things of that nature. So for me, Derrick Henry's kind of at the top. And other than that, I'm really not trying to venture because most of these names are established. And as we know with running backs, that means they're on the downhill. So I don't see tons of upside with that. So Javonte for me, and if not, maybe looking at some other young running backs and even potentially thinking about rookies coming in. Obviously they're not out yet, but thinking of guys for season 2 potentially.
Yeah. Quickly, Henry, Hall of Famer if he retired tomorrow.
I think so. Yes.
Man, that was probably some of the most debate we got. The other one, Damian Harris being in the not a standout bucket. People did not like that. Any thoughts?
New England running backs, they just recycle them. As always, Belichick's ahead of the game. He's been doing this for a decade plus, recycling the running backs. You can argue he's not even the best running back in his backfield with Stevenson. Ramondre had some beast games this past year.
Yeah. We'll be interested to see. Definitely of the people in that not a standout bucket, I think kind of Damian Harris is the one most likely to emerge there. Miles, people were talking about Miles Sanders. It's like, how many times do you got to not do it for someone to stop saying that you're going to do it? So
you know how Penn State fans are.
As an Ohio State Buckeye, exactly. I sure do.
That's right.
So jump into wide receivers. I mean, the names on this list are just insane. And like the young high upside group in of itself is just an insane group. So certainly don't have time to get through everything and still get to sleep tonight. Any kind of names in that like young high upside or in particular that proven solid? I know we got a ton of discussion about the talent in that proven solid bucket, and we had to tier people at some point. But like, what names there? If you had to pick a couple, would you say, I think they should absolutely be higher?
Yeah, that is the cohort that you stare at. And for me, man, it's almost like, who do I not want? CD Lamb with obviously Amari Cooper, potentially leaving. I don't know if that's 100% confirmed yet, but it sounds like he's going to be out the door. Jalen Waddle with, the new coach in Miami coming from San Francisco, the Shanahan tree, they're going to just feed him whenever they can. Jerry Jeudy with the new addition of Russell Wilson, Kadarius Toney.
This list was put together before the Russ news, and right. I feel way better about advocating for Jeudy moving up given that.
Yeah, absolutely. Kadarius Toney, if he's healthy, and Brian Dable can, get something out of Daniel Jones or potentially Mitch Trubisky or another quarterback they bring in there. I think Rashad Bateman, he had that really weird injury that kind of nagged him throughout the year. But when he was out there, Lamar was only healthy for about 4 or 5 games. When they were both out there with Mark Andrews, they really had a formidable offense. And it's so weird because we're used to the Ravens. Obviously, you're a Bengals fan knowing how it used to be all about their defense, but their defense was pretty bad, especially for them last year. But their offense was pretty great. So, Marquise Brown being kind of seems to be like that in the NBA, at least, like that 1B type player. He might be the 1B type wide receiver, whereas Bateman might be the 1A in that year 2 breakout. So, just tons of guys there. Another one that proven solid, that Hunter Renfrow. I really want to see with Josh McDaniels how he gets utilized. Derek Carr loves throwing the short ball. Renfrow is just a winner. He's just one of those guys. You see the Alex Caruso moments in NBA Top Shot and things of that nature. He's kind of like a cult hero with that. So I could see that being an interesting one as well.
Yeah. I think given some of the feedback, and if I had to do it again, like that proven solid is a good mix of veterans who've been doing it for really well for a long time and some young guys. I think I'd probably move Terry McLaurin up because he isn't that old, probably still young enough to qualify for a young high upside bucket if I were going to do it again. I don't know the exact, I don't remember exactly how old he is right now, but it definitely feels, there's a ton of really talented guys in that bucket. Even currently talented, Godwin, McLaurin, Cooper, Cooks, Lockett, like all had great years this year and all still feel kind of at the top of their game. So tough to try to differentiate, but I think if I were gonna do it again and move one guy, I probably would move McLaurin up.
Yeah, and that's definitely the Buckeye in you. I just wish for his sake he wasn't with the Commanders. Can you imagine him with Joe or an actual quarterback and an actual offense? He's an absolute stud. And he's one of the only reasons I still watch their games. He's an absolute beast. One person I did want to mention was Odell Beckham. Really just interesting to see where he goes free agency wise. I can see that Super Bowl moment being really interesting if he were to leave LA, since you're only going to get 4 or 5, I think 3 or 4 moments from him in LA. They won the Super Bowl. He's such a famous player, so that is definitely one to keep your eye on as well. See where he lands.
Yeah, certainly the name is as big as the game at this point, but he showed flashes. Even that touchdown catch in the Super Bowl was pretty impressive. So one guy in the not a standout bucket that you think kind of might ascend.
Oh man, Brandon Ayuk. If you remember going into fantasy football, and I am a proud Sun Devil. He was supposed to be. A lot of people thought he was going to be the number 1 wide receiver, and Deebo Samuel just absolutely had a monster year last year. So be interesting to see how that happens if Deebo were to get hurt. Shanahan is such a creative play caller. I could see him making a huge jump like that. KJ Osborne with, unfortunately, Adam Thielen is one of my favorite players in the NFL, but his time's seemingly coming to an end here shortly. And defenses are going to just have to try to stop Justin Jefferson. So, we saw some flashes. I remember that Arizona Cardinals game. He had a couple big plays this past year. So, those guys might make those big jumps. But yeah, how about yourself? Anything stick out?
I think, I got burned so bad by Visca last year that I don't know that I can go back to Visca, but from a combination of like youth and draft pedigree, he feels like he might have some more upside that most people in that list don't have, but I do agree. I think Ayuk was another one who generated a ton of discussion. People did not like that we called him not a standout, despite the fact that, I mean, he objectively wasn't a standout last year. He was fine-ish for the second half of the year and less than that at the beginning. So, all right, we get to some of our lighter tiers, but again, a lot of discussion here on our George Kittle potential Hall of Fame. What's your take? You think?
Oh man,
you think he's on that trajectory, or you think that's too aggressive?
There's few people who like George Kittle as much as me, and I think that's actually aggressive. He just, with the injuries, I mean, he's an amazing blocker, but I mean, it's just so hard to quantify that. And if we're talking about an actual football player, and I know it doesn't make sense because we are talking about the actual Hall of Fame. But the way that the Hall of Fame is measured, I think that's a bit of a stretch. I would love for him to be it. I think he's a great player. He's a throwback player, but he just gets hurt a lot. It's hard to rely on him. I think these tiers are pretty good. I do think Mark Andrews, just the fact that the Ravens gave him that contract. I just have so much respect for the Ravens organization. It's kind of a yin yang here in the DC area. The Commanders are just like the absolute worst, and the Ravens are just a really good organization. So anytime I see them hand out a contract to somebody, that's always, I take that with a great deal of respect. And just the scarcity of the position, and off that, it's hard not to just be in love with Kyle Pitts. The Ridley news. I mean, there's just going to be a ton of targets, and Ryan Reynolds mentions this all the time. He's a wide receiver. He's a wide receiver who has tight end designation. So I'm happy to take advantage of that as much as I can. And then a little bit further down the list, I don't know if do you have Donald Parham down here? It's almost like a bid. I know some of the establish the run guys always talk about him, but he's just got a massive frame. With the upside with Justin Herbert being a tight end with the Chargers, he might be a guy we could throw a dart at. I
don't know if he has a moment yet. I'm not certain.
Right, and that's why I figure why he wouldn't be on here. So maybe something comes out next year. You get, not only is it a Series 2, but then it is a Top Shot debut. And then Njoku, that other team in Cleveland, they just franchised him. You would think they're going to utilize him, first round pick. Just a freak athlete. Still, I think he's only 24 or 25. I think he was like 20 when he entered the league. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think the other guy that certainly has his arrow pointing up after the news this week is Albert O. With Fant going, and he was definitely a guy who kind of emerged as a weapon despite a crowded wide receiver and tight end core and not good quarterback play at all. Will be interesting to see if they could view him as a potential starting number one tight end, or if they if they're going to draft someone at the position to replace Fant. But definitely a guy that might be worth taking a shot on right now in the hopes that he benefits from Russ, who's always done well with tight ends despite never having great talent at the position.
Yeah, it was actually funny. My first thought when I heard about the trade was I was actually happy the Commanders didn't get Russell Wilson, because he was like the only person who would make me care about that franchise again. But once I heard he was going to Denver, I was automatically thinking about the owners club. I was like, oh man, Broncos tight end card is going to be sick with Alberto and Fant. And then I heard Fant was part of the package. I was like, oh damn, that's too bad. So just shows you how, if you haven't played, the owners club, it just completely revolutionizes it when you get the whole position group.
Yeah, lots of changes to the owners club stuff, and in the offseason, ability to make some of these trades now and invest for next year with the S1 cards is big. Our favorite tier, of course, are kickers and punters.
Absolutely. Justin Tucker is an absolute legend, so I would probably put a little bit more of a buffer between Hall of Famer and potential Hall of Famer. And that's more to say about Justin Tucker than Harrison Butker. I mean, he's a great kicker as well, but Justin Tucker is just going to be, he'll be like on the all NFL team, when they do the 200-year anniversary or whatever. I mean, he's just unbelievable. And I say that I'm very jealous just because a lot of my friends are Ravens fans. And I mean, for so long, they would just play defense. I mean, this as a Bengals fan, they would just play defense, don't turn the ball over, and just get it across half midfield, midfield, and just you're in Tucker range. And so he's unbelievable. I do think y'all have a great kicker though. McPherson, not only is
Very
he got a lot, not only does he have a lot of talent, he's also got a little bit of, personality, which I don't, it's almost more of a swag than Tucker has. Tucker has a little bit more of a swag, whereas McPherson is more of a character, which I think is almost kind of jives with that team, right? Because just Joe's got the swag on the Bengals, so McPherson's more of a kind of a character, which is fun. But other than that,
but important for something like NFL All Day too, right? Not that I think that kickers are ever going to be particularly valuable, but I do think that as we think about players and kind of their short and long-term value, in addition to kind of the on the field product, you've also got to have the name recognition. You got to have the brand. I know we had originally had DJ Moore as a wide receiver in the, the proven solid bucket. And it's like, he's 24 and has like 3 1,100 yard seasons. But you don't think about him because he's not a big name off the field. And so that does start to matter.
Absolutely. It's that holistic approach.
So, and then the last one, there are so many defensive backs and linebackers in NFL All Day today. I know a lot of people got all fired up about us listing Von Miller as a linebacker. Guys, we got these designations from All Day. So, hold your horses. Certainly, there's a lot to go through here, but I'd love to just hear kind of your overall approach. Again, I don't think a lot of people are going to be really excited if they pull a defensive player in an all-day pack, but there is value to be had here. Ryan talked about it in his article from the summer. What would your approach be to trying to find value in defensive players?
Yeah, I'm definitely going to kind of outsource that. So find trusted sources like Ryan or whomever, and I'm going to read their articles and instead of diving into the defense, I might make an investment on a Von Miller moment or like a young, Micah Parsons rookie moment, things of that nature. And if I see that the market has steam, well, then I have some exposure to it, and then I will kind of dive into it. But for me, I'm going to let the market prove it to me before I kind of dive into it, if that makes any sense. Now, there's 9 different ways to skin a cat and whatnot. So if you do want to dive into this, I think that, maybe you don't focus on offense and you just focus on this, and that would be, a good strategy. But for me, that Von Miller moment, he tweeted out kind of cryptically about potentially returning to the Broncos now that Russell Wilson's coming back. He's got a Super Bowl moment. He's got, he's got Rams moments that's Series 1. He's a Hall of Famer, and, they won the Super Bowl that year. So that if I see him sign with the Broncos, I might jump on that moment because, that's something that's going to be hard to replicate. And that way I have some exposure to defense. If I see that market is maturing and has some traction and volume, then I might dive into it and say, okay, is it defensive backs? Is it pass rushers? Is it turnover guys? Is it, where do we find the signal in that? But for me, I'm kind of starting at such a baseline level because I'm more, I come from the fantasy and sports betting side of things. I'm going to have a little bit of exposure, outsource the actual research to people I trust. And if we see value here, we see, we're getting good returns, then I'll kind of dive deeper into it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Funny how many of the big names at the top of the list kind of are already on the move this offseason. But it's an interesting perspective of despite those big names being on the list, most of them, don't. Von Miller obviously made his name with the Broncos. His moment is with the Rams. Khalil Mack made his name in Oakland and then had some good years in Chicago and now might be on the move as well. Richard Sherman, has played for a few different teams, and his moment will not be with the Seahawks, which you associate him with. So definitely some interest there. If there's one guy in the potential Hall of Fame that you think is like absolutely a lock, who is it?
Oh man, I'd probably Khalil Mack. For me, it's Khalil Mack or Patrick Peterson. I want to say the Honey Badger just because I'm such a huge fan of the Honey Badger. Just remember his LSU days and whatnot. But I just think Khalil Mack and Patrick Peterson's body of work is pretty much cemented. How about yourself?
Yeah, I think Mack with the Defensive Player of the Years has a really good chance to get there. There was a statistic about the the number of defensive linemen or linebackers who've gotten in without high sack totals being really low, and Mac isn't there yet, but he's still got some time if he can stay healthy. So I think that makes sense.
And if TJ Watt were a little bit older, I'd probably put him in there, but he's just so young. But, we could easily 2-3 years from now be having him in the potential Hall of Fame or even Hall of Fame category.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we've got the last tier to come out will be tomorrow, but now we did tease it. So we will just touch on it briefly. The week 18 replay pack expected value. So this is Alpha from the Herzig bot himself. Didn't join the pod today, but did send us this. And so this is what we're expecting for the EV for the packs tomorrow. I'm guessing he'll probably put this out on Twitter tomorrow, but wanted to get it to people who are watching the show earlier quickly. So we're expecting standard packs, again, to be kind of basically break even, slightly EV negative, $43 to $50 expected value. And then the premium packs being a little bit more EV negative. But, this is obviously expected. Some are going to be below this. Some are going to be above it. It depends very much on what you get in the pack, as always. But good to have this information as you're making your decision on do you want to buy or not.
Absolutely. And remember, this is what a lot of people were kind of, complaining about or wanting for NBA Top Shot. So don't, if you see the negative EV, that's not necessarily a bad thing now that we have a marketplace, all the variables we've talked about in the show so far.
Yeah. And that's obviously only for kind of current EV that doesn't take into account any changes in value over time. So awesome. Well, we've been going for a while now. Jay, any last thoughts before we wrap up today?
No. Just something I put in my article about the marketplace is just, reality is, happiness is reality minus expectations. So, if you're expecting to make these quick flips and things of that nature, you're not going to be happy with your purchases. I'm pretty confident in that. But if you are mindful with it and you're waiting to hold, 6, 12, 18 months plus, I think you're going to just really have a lot of fun. And that was the thing that drove me to Top Shot was, man, this is a lot of fun. And if you kind of go in with that expectations, using the tools, that Own the Moment has, reaching out in Discord, reaching out to myself on Twitter, whatever I can do to help, and you're actively learning from it. I mean, like I said, that's how I became a part of the OTM team was, I was just having fun. You guys were helping me out. I reached out and now, I'm hoping to teach some people, how to have a good time and hopefully, of course, make some money in the long term. But really, it's just all about having fun.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, lots to keep an eye on over the next couple of weeks. We'll continue to push content around all day, both kind of players to target from the player perspective, as well as marketplace analysis, similar to what we've been doing over the past couple of weeks. All the replay packs are coming out. So really exciting. Definitely, things that I think will be particularly excited about and probably come back and talk about, get back together and have another pod on once we start to learn a little bit more about the roadmap and the utility and what that means. So super exciting stuff. But Jay, appreciate the time today. And, thanks for giving all your insight to the people.
Absolutely. And congratulations on the first well done hosting job.
Oh yeah, well, we'll see if anyone sees this. I did do it all by myself, but I doubt anyone's going to see this. We probably just wasted a bunch of Jay's time, but hopefully producer Coop will give it the stamp of approval. He can edit out all the parts he doesn't like. So. All right, well, with that, we'll call it a night for Jay and Bach and the OTM team. We're out.